Well, winter is officially over, and if you're anything like me, that means it's time to open the windows and do like a deep clean of the house, declutter, and get rid of all of the things that have just been cooped up in the house all winter long because now you can finally go outside, move around, and just get things out. Well, to help us get ready for that spring cleaning and get ready for summer is Emily McDermott. Now, she is back for another episode to talk to us a little bit more about decluttering and the pile shuffle, as well as our mindset around the things that we have in our home and anything new we might be bringing into the house. Now, Emily McDermott is a wife, a mom of two very energetic little boys, and a simplicities seeker. She's also the host of the top 1.5% globally ranked podcast, Moms Overcoming Overwhelm, where she helps moms declutter their homes, heads, and hearts. Emily enjoys writing poetry, dancing, and eating peanut butter out of the jar. Now, I hope you're ready, mamas, to get started and learn some tips and tricks for decluttering and getting ready for summer. Hey mama, are you struggling with how to make time for yourself as a work-at-home mom? Are you drowning in laundry and dishes, poopy diapers, and kids who are constantly screaming, Mom, even though they're 5 feet away from you? I get it. I'm Jessa, and this is Caught Up in Motherhood, where I want to help you set priorities, create boundaries, ask for help, and learn to love yourself in motherhood again. You can show up for you without sacrificing motherhood and without the guilt. So if you're ready to be caught up in motherhood, then go grab a fresh cup of coffee and that laundry basket sitting in the corner. Don't worry, I've got mine too. And listen in to today's episode. All right, mamas, I am so excited. We have Emily McDermott back to do another episode about decluttering and our energy and mindset. But this time, we're going to talk about spring cleaning. And Emily and I were just talking about whether or not I'm a little special in the fact that I am excited about spring cleaning. It is one of my favorite times of the year. It's like just this total reset from winter to summer. And I get excited just cleaning it all, decluttering it, and getting ready for this new season, which summer for me is always a representation of fun. And I got to get ready for all the fun we're going to have as a family. So I asked Emily to come back on and talk to us about this spring season and spring cleaning and how to get our energy and our mindset right to be able to do this and be successful at it and not get overwhelmed in it. So before we jump in to that topic, Emily, for those that don't know you, can you tell us a little bit about yourself first?
Yeah. Thanks for having me back, Jessa. I'm
Yeah.
so excited to be back. And yeah, so I'm Emily. I've been married to my husband, Pat, for 14 years. We have 2 boys, almost 7 and 5, crazy, crazy boys.
Oh,
And they're fun. And I've been staying at home with them since my oldest was born. And I've kind of been in this like decluttering simplicity space since 2014 and currently have a podcast, Moms Overcoming Overwhelm, where I helped overwhelm mamas specifically with decluttering their homes, heads, and hearts. So yeah, that's a little about me.
awesome. Loving all of that. And we'll have the links to Emily's podcast and her stuff in the show notes for you guys so that you can follow along and get more tips and tricks from Emily. All things overwhelmed and decluttering and organizing the home. All right. So, spring cleaning, Emily, we're going to start big. How do we take the energy of the spring season? I have a lot of it right now. Like I'm excited to help us declutter our homes and just simplify our routine.
Yeah. So I know we were talking a little bit that I really don't like cleaning at all
Mhm.
in any form. It's something that I know is necessary for like my own health and the health of my family, but I
Yeah.
never enjoy it. But that's one of the things I love about decluttering. And I remember the last conversation we had, I think I threw out this funny statistic, which was a decluttered home, there's 40% less housework. which means
Yeah.
40% less cleaning, which is
Mhm.
why I love keeping less stuff, because that means that there's less cleaning and it's easier to maintain and easier to tidy. So if you think about the fact that decluttering makes your cleaning, especially spring cleaning, easier, that's definitely a good motivator. But I think that I do really like this moving from the winter to the spring as far as like having that shift in energy. And I think it's great to take that opportunity to really reassess how things are working in your home. So maybe that would be some of the systems. I guess we'll talk more specifically decluttering type stuff, but the systems that you have around your stuff.
Mhm.
And a lot of times people don't remember, realize that they need to have systems around their stuff. So I say, okay, when things come into your home, what happens to them? And people are like, oh, well, they go on the counter. I'm like, uh-huh. And then what? They're like, I don't know. Sometimes they just stay on the counter. Like,
Oh,
that's not a system, you know? So kind of reassessing like for the things that are coming into your home, whether that be mail, school paperwork, or even things just like things that you're purchasing.
yeah.
What happens to them? Where do they go? Do you like how that system is working? Are there things where it's like you're doing the stuff shuffle, you're moving piles from one room to the next? It's a good opportunity to kind of look at those routines and also any decluttering routines that you have in place. And maybe you don't have any, but I do these 15-minute a day decluttering challenges in my group, which is really like we can do anything for 15 minutes, you know? So it's like, okay, we're going to use some of these mindset shifts and use some of these kind of guidelines as far as where we start, what we do, and then make sure that we're able to kind of do that consistently. Of course, using that momentum from spring to be like, okay, let's do it. But I know you and I were talking about like, we don't want to go too far where we
Right.
get too excited and we're like, it's all going to go. Like, let's get it
Yeah, just
all
getting
out
rid
of
of
here.
everything and starting fresh, like,
Yeah, so
if
there's like
only.
kind of a happy medium. If you're able to kind of recognize it's something that needs to be sustainable, that you're incorporating into your life all the time, you
Mhm.
can certainly enjoy that kind of energy behind the spring cleaning vibe. But you have to understand, what routines are working, what aren't, what matters to you, and then also looking at your current season and your capacity to handle what you want to do, because it could be like, yay, it's spring. And then meanwhile, your kids are starting like 4 sports in the spring, So then it's like, oh, okay, well, maybe I can't do everything that I want to do. So these are just some of the ways I think to kind of get started with really that reflection on what's working and what's not in your home.
That's a great first step. I was, kinda laughing at myself a little bit. You're talking about doing the pile shuffle. I currently have a pile shuffle going. I'm not proud of that, but it's just that kind of a week where there's a pile, but I know that I'm gonna get that pile, like, you know, taken down and things put away, but there's like you said, if it doesn't have a home, you don't know what to do with it or where to put it. You gotta figure out where that home's gonna be.
Hmm.
So, you talked about that first step of being taking 15 minutes and starting with something small. What do we do when we start getting that momentum? So, we've done that 15 minutes, we're feeling really good about it, and we wanna do a little bit more. What would you say would be, like, the next step bef before we get to, like, just taking the entire house apart and and going
Yeah.
that far?
Yeah, let's not do that. So I always recommend, starting with the unsentimental, unemotional areas. So
Mhm.
obviously, when you're doing those first initial 15 minutes, you want to start in those types of places. And a lot of times there's some other ideas. I think last time we talked, I was talking about, your car in the bathroom and that kind
Mm,
of stuff.
mhm.
Your purse or your diaper bag is another great place. Your fridge. Like when you're thinking about spring cleaning, I think about getting rid of like the dust and the dirt and the
Yeah.
blah. And there's probably a lot of, if you're like me with young kids, there's a lot of blah going on in the fridge. So once you're kind of through those areas, then it's really like, okay, what are kind of like the major pain point areas in my home right now? And let's say, for example, one of them is like the playroom, and it's like nothing is working the way that you want. Kids are constantly tripping over everything, and you're like, okay, something has to change. Before you go and you just kind of like plow through and get rid of every single toy that they have, I think one of the most important things that I do with my clients is you think about the intent for that room. How do
Okay.
you want that room to function? What do you want it to look like? What do you want it to feel like? Maybe more so than what do you want it to look like? And so when I was working with this one mom, she was like, yeah, I just feel like it's kind of crammed in here. It's a playroom, but the kids can't really play in it. And there were two chairs in there that were taking up a pretty large amount of space. And I said, well, do you use the chairs? Well, not really. Okay. Well, what if we got rid of the chairs and we could see what that felt like? And sure enough, it was like, wow, like just that little change, like that feels
Mhm.
so much better. Then kind of looking at the space that you have, maybe you have shelves, maybe you have bins, whatever the case may be. Start with what you have. Don't feel like you have to go out and go buy everything at the Container Store or go, put everything on Facebook Marketplace, but really saying like, what do my kids play with the most, and how do they interact with this space? She wanted to keep the baby toys on the bottom level so that the baby could get to the toys, right? She
Mhm.
wanted to not have like books kind of coming out of every direction, but like, okay, I want to designate one or two parts of this bookshelf to the books. Again, using that container concept, I know that we had talked about where you designate an artificial boundary for something.
Yeah.
But that's really a great way to sort of tackle a room like that. You know how you want it to look and feel, you know how you want it to function. And then you create kind of artificial boundaries around these different categories. And you're experimenting. You don't have to throw it out. You don't have to, donate it right away. You can put it to the side, put it in a bin for 30 days and see how it feels to be in that space. And if you're like, wow, this feels really good, and the kids aren't asking about all these other toys, then great, maybe declutter them. But those are just some ways that I would tackle something like a playroom where it does
Mhm.
seem very overwhelming, but there's a lot of great payoff if you're able to kind of approach it with that intentionality.
I love that. I love when you talked about the, putting it away for a period of time, kinda like testing it and seeing how you feel, and not necessarily, "Okay, I pulled it out there, now I gotta get rid of it," but putting it to the side for a little bit to test it out. This morning even, I put my boys in the same room, right? So I got a 4-year-old and a 1-year-old sharing a bedroom now, and I keep taking things in and out of their room because I'm trying to figure out what's gonna work, right? So, like, they're both in their beds, and then I had nightstands for them. Well, the nightstands turned into jump off points from one bed to the other bed and, like, bridge. Okay, so those are out. But I don't wanna get rid of them, so they're just put aside. Maybe they'll get them back when they're a little older. So, I love that idea because a part of me was already thinking, like, "Do I sell these? Do I keep them? What do I do?" And getting, in essence, like, that permission, right, to hold on to them for a little bit and see if we'll use them later. So, with that, right, we talked about keeping it or getting rid of it, and the shuffle spot. I'm gonna remember that for a while now, that shuffle spot, and be like, "Ah, that's my spot. I gotta take care of that." I think comes rummage season too. So, kind of off topic, but still a little bit here. What would you say when we're bringing all this stuff in, do we need to be keeping in mind? Because for me too, right, you're spring cleaning, you're decluttering, you're getting rid of the things, and then it's so easy to go to the store, go to the rummage, and then replace it, right?
Yes.
So, do you have any tips for us on what we should be doing on the other end of it, like when we're looking to purchase or to add back to our space?
Yes. Yes, yes, yes. And I agree with you, because there's 2 sides to the equation, right? There's the
Yeah.
stuff coming out and the stuff coming in. And I think some of the things that we talked about already, you can kind of use these as your tools in your toolbox. You will always be able to justify like a purchase at a rummage sale where it's like super inexpensive. And
Mhm.
you're like, well, the kids might wear this or whatever. And oh, they might grow into this. You're always going to be able to justify it. Let's just kind of, not you necessarily, Jessa.
Yeah.
I'm like, Jessa. So just call that what it is, that there's the availability and the opportunity to get hand-me-downs or things at rummage sales that are cheap. Okay.
Mhm.
So then it's looking at, of course, what do we actually need now in this season. And you have to use, I think, these artificial boundaries to really set that for yourself, because otherwise you can always have a reason to bring more into your home. So if you're saying, okay, well, for what is fitting my kids right now in this moment, I have designated this part of the drawer for this category, this part of the drawer for this category. For things that are off season, I'm going to have this particular bin, and this is all that I'm going to designate for it. You really have to be kind of consistent and almost a little ruthless with being able to be like, this is what I've designated. And
Mm-hmm.
so if I really want this thing from the rummage sale, then I'm going to do a one in, one out, and I'm going to, replace it that way. I would think the other thing besides using those artificial physical boundaries is this, again, this concept of capacity, and not only thinking about what we're able to handle and manage and knowing all of those resources that are required to manage our stuff, like we talked about before, our time and our energy and so forth, but also what our kids are able to handle and what they're able to manage. And if they have closets that are filled to the brim with stuff, then what they're going to do is see that as that visual stimulus overwhelm, and they're just going to go in there and they're going to destroy everything if they're like my kids.
That's why they do that?
Yeah, so I'm kinda like, yeah, it's, like, too much, and they're like, "Ooh, this looks fun," and they
Yeah.
don't see it for what it is, like, "No, these are your clothes to get dressed." But if they're able to recognize, like, "Oh, there's my favorite shirt. Oh, there's my
Mhm.
favorite dress," and have space between it to actually recognize, like, "Oh, this is what I have." I've seen with my own kids, even in their drawers now with, like, T-shirts, if they have more than maybe 8 to 10 shirts in there, they can't recognize where the shirt is that they want to pick for that day. Like, it's
Mm.
just
Okay.
crammed in there. You need to be able to set your kids up for success with being able to make choices when it comes to clothes or toys or whatever, and too much isn't doing them any favors. So think about their capacity, your capacity, and then again, going back to those artificial boundaries, and those should help you limit, I guess, what you're bringing in.
Okay. I love that idea too, the number of shirts. I'm gonna be looking at dressers now for sure. I think we get stuck in that moment of, transition sometimes where they go up a size and
Yeah.
you gotta take the little stuff out and put the bigger clothes in, and then you're in that middle space where you have both in there. So I love that idea of thinking about your kids that way and getting their clothes organized, their toys organized in a way that they can use it, and it makes me think about the times that my kids have just, taken the bucket and just dumped the whole thing out. I'm like, "Oh, oh, you were looking for a specific toy and you couldn't find it, so yeah, alright." There goes all the little Transformers and superhero toys all on the floor. Alright, okay.
Yeah, that is, I think one of the hardest parts, I think, about being a parent is just all of these toys with the little parts. And then that
Mhm.
happens and you're like, even if they help, that I'm gonna be involved in that, like, that is gonna take a while. Yeah, there's, like, that sinking feeling when
Uh-huh.
something gets dumped out on the ground, so I've definitely been there.
Yeah, yeah, you're like, "I just cleaned that up.
Mhm.
I just reorganized that." And it's like, they know.
Yeah.
"It's nice and clean now, I should go play with that." And then chaos ensues, but that's
Mhm.
alright. They're learning. So, I guess, Emily, with all of this, like, we talked about bringing it in, taking it out, moving it around, little steps to move forward. Can we talk a little bit too about our mindset shift? So, how can we renew our mindset for those of us that maybe aren't as excited as I am, or maybe get discouraged, right? Like, we get started, we get going, and then we get overwhelmed
Yeah.
and we just stop because we don't know how to move forward. Maybe there's perfectionism going on, or just this feeling of overwhelm. What shifts can we do to renew our mindset to continue and finish at least that project that we started?
Yeah, and it's easy for motivation to wane or you have just, like,
Mhm.
life happening. And so there's a couple mindset shifts that I always go to. One of them is just sort of this abundance mindset versus scarcity mindset. Abundance more meaning that we have enough, that our worth isn't coming from what we own or our, the roles that we play and this sort of thing. And so we're able to have a feeling or come from a place of generosity and giving, knowing that we have enough and we can give from that place rather than, oh, I need to hold on to this. I need this just in case, something might happen or whatever that the case may be. So I feel like coming from that abundant mindset when you are looking at your stuff and just recognizing the things that you are not using, how they could be immediately blessing someone that might live like down the street from you instead of it literally collecting dust. And if
Mhm.
you are like me and you have generous family and friends, then if for some reason you get rid of a toy that your kid barely played with and they ask about it, then I'm sure that there is a generous relative that would be happy to replace it if your kid is devastated. But I will tell you that has never happened to me. And I have been doing this since my kids were born. It's never been a problem. So I think the first would be just kind of like having that kind of more of that deeper mindset shift of, am I looking at this from a place of abundance where I'm kind of like giving freely, or am I gripping tightly to all of this stuff thinking that I might need it someday? So that would be the first one.
Okay. So abundance versus scarcity.
Yeah.
I think that's cool. Like you said, thinking about it in that way, taking that second to really change your mindset a little bit and think on it.
Yeah.
And I think that's a fear that we have too with the kids, that we're gonna take away that toy and they're gonna notice or they're gonna ask for it back. But if we do that whole 30-day trial thing and put it in a bin, you can
Mhm.
bring it back or repurchase something similar to it. I think is great instead of having 100 different, let's say, Paw Patrol towers.
Just as an example.
Just as an example, I can say thankfully that I only have 1 Paw Patrol tower,
Mhm.
but I can tell you how many times my boys both, "Can I have that one? Can I have that one?" Starring TV shows
Yeah, I
and the
know.
commercials, "I want that one."
Yes, I have the same thing, and I've noticed that, if I stick with the tried and true of some of those
Mm,
open-ended toys and everything that I know that they're going to be playing with, we're able to avoid some of, like, the character-driven stuff
yeah,
a little bit. Yeah, that is hard, and just recognizing that, I mean, I can't remember any toy that I ever asked for when I was little that with me not getting it, I was, like, devastated and, like, talking to my
mhm,
therapist about it as an adult. So you're not, like, ruining your kids' lives if you're, not able to, or not willing to kinda give them everything that they're asking for because
mhm,
it's, like, not feasible, so,
right, and
yeah,
I think it changes so fast, like,
yes, it is.
just go down the toy aisle again, and they'll find something else that they want
Yes.
just as badly.
Yes, it's so true. Yeah, so that kinda goes, I mean, we already talked about kind of seeing this as an experiment, that
Yeah,
it's not something where it's hard and fast and you're having to make these rules, and that goes for your routines, but also for your stuff, so kind of trying out living with less, recognizing you can put things out of sight, out of mind, and then just make sure you put a reminder on your phone to go back and check on it,
yeah,
and so forth, so, yeah, that, I would say setting the intent, which we talked a little bit about, and then again, I know, decision fatigue is a huge thing. Just
mhm,
recognizing that excess stuff is contributing to your decision fatigue because you're having to make those decisions. When you think about the connection between stuff, choices, and decisions, then it's like, oh, wow, I'm already so tired. And now if I have to keep all this stuff, I'm going to have to make more decisions about it. And I don't want anyone asking me what's for dinner. And that's kind of important. So,
right,
yeah, so I would say those, and then there are a couple of, like, thought exercises that I would recommend, just a couple quick ones if you want me to go through
yeah,
those. Okay.
yeah, I think that'd be great.
So these are kind of just sort of to, like, shock you back into, like, remembering what's important. So I'm gonna test them out on you, Jessa, and you're
Okay,
not prepped, so we'll see how this goes. Okay. So you are on vacation, you have your phone, you have your wedding ring, you have your clothes, you have your purse, you have your children, you have your husband, and your neighbor calls you and says, "Jessa, I'm so sorry your house flooded." Okay, name the 3 things you would miss. Go.
um, ooh, I don't even know.
Exactly.
'Cause, like, first I'm like, "Pictures," and I'm like, "Well, no, those are all digital now." So they're all backed up and on a cloud somewhere. Yeah,
Yeah.
put me on I can't
Mhm.
name anything off the top well, the dog, but he'd probably be
Okay,
in
I'm
daycare.
sorry. Let's say that the dog's on vacation with you
Yeah,
too.
he's on vacation or in daycare, so we'll take him out of the equation.
Well, the point being I know, I love this 'cause I have the same reaction. I'm like, "Huh?" And
Right.
the point being that's shocking you into realizing, like, the amount of time that we're spending managing all of this stuff,
Yeah.
which is, like, not how we wanna be spending our time and energy, we wouldn't
Mhm.
miss, like, any of it. And if there is anything that you're like, "Oh, yeah, I would miss the physical photos because I haven't backed them up," or
Right.
"I would miss, this family heirloom." Well, make sure that you're backing it up, taking the picture, doing that because, of course, you never know if there's gonna be some sort of natural disaster that happens, but it really puts in perspective what's actually important to us and what's not,
Yeah.
and then it's kinda like, "Oh, okay," and then you can more easily make some of those decisions about what to get rid of, so that's thought exercise number 1,
I
if you
like
wanna
that
do it.
one, kinda
Yeah,
thinking about it that way, like, especially when you're like, "Do I get rid of it? Do I keep it?" And you just can't decide. I think that's a
yeah,
really good one.
yeah. So the second one,
Yeah.
kind of similar, but this is for like sentimental items. So I want you to think of like a sentimental item or a family heirloom that you're kind of holding on to, kind of more out of guilt, like, but you don't really like it. You don't really, you're kind of like, you don't have to say what it is
Yeah.
necessarily, but um, how would you feel if it spontaneously combusted right now?
Ooh, probably mixed, right? Like that, "Oh, it's a family heirloom, it's been the family for so long," but at the same time, probably a little relief, like, I don't
Yeah.
have to
Yeah.
keep
So
it and then make
exactly.
my one of my kids take it.
Yeah. Yeah. So
"I
if
held
the
on to it for this
primary
long, now you have to."
yes, exactly. So if the primary, response,
Mhm.
feeling is relief, then considering like, okay, this is obviously not adding value, and also it's taking up a lot of emotional weight and space in my life. So
Yeah.
even if it doesn't take up a lot of physical space, if it's like you look at it and it's, reminding you of like something that doesn't make you happy or like something from your past that is kind of like, not like for me, that was my high school yearbook. Like I kept it and I didn't know why I was keeping it. And then I looked at it and I really didn't know why I was keeping it. And high school wasn't like my happiest time. So like why am I
Yeah.
holding on to this thing just because I'm quote unquote supposed to? So then that was something I let go that kind of had more of that emotional weight, but it wasn't really
Mhm.
helping me. So that one is good for family heirlooms or sentimental items. The spontaneous combustion question, which comes from the minimalists. I did not come up with that. So, okay, so there's one last one if you're okay with
Okay.
that.
Yeah.
And this is more slightly morbid, but that's okay. I actually have done a lot of research and kind of things that I've done about like Swedish death cleaning, which
Okay.
is that you are getting rid of the excess that you have so that if you were to die tomorrow, it wouldn't be a burden for your family to have
Mm.
to go through everything.
Yeah.
And so that kind of like and also, if I were to pass, what would my kids be saying at my funeral? Would they say like, "Oh, I love that," my mommy always used to say to me those 3 little words, "Just a minute." Or, she just was always searching for something in her life and especially on her phone.
Mhm.
Or, like when I always asked mommy like how she was feeling, she would say, "Tired." So, like, what would
Yeah.
our kids like right now, real time, like, what would my almost 7 and 5-year-olds, like, what would they say about me? And it's really to kinda shock you into, like, am I living in alignment with what I say is important to me? Because
Mhm.
if I'm overwhelmed and I'm stretched thin and all of these types of things, and my kids remember that I said just a minute and I was always looking at my phone and I was always tired, then this stuff surrounding me is not helping me like be the mom and the woman that I want to be. So
Yeah.
again, a little bit morbid, but still
Mhm.
good to
But it's a
kind of like,
strong
yeah,
thought process to think about, really.
yeah,
You said sometimes you need that shock and awe to,
yeah,
like, snap out of it or, like, to see what it is that you are doing or aren't doing to really then take that action
Mhm.
and move forward in a positive way and shift that mindset.
Yeah, so if the energy of spring
Yeah.
only gets you so far, then you can use some of these other mindset shifts to really help motivate you.
Okay. No, I love those. Those are some really good ones, and I will definitely be using those for maybe those harder items to get rid of and, like, decluttering, and I think you brought up toys. That's one of the big ones that I am personally tackling right now is toys.
It also works well, for kids' artwork. I have something called Art Purgatory, which is an old
Mm,
hamper I don't use, and any artwork that comes in that the kids don't want to display on their corkboard, it's going there for, like, up to 2 to 3 months. So if they say, "Hey, mommy, where's that dragonfly bracelet I made?" And I'm like, "Oh, let me check," Because it's like you can't have all of the crafts and all of the things that they've ever made, like,
yeah.
in your home, like, all the time. It's just and you don't know where to put them, and it's really hard.
Mhm.
So, I use that art purgatory as like okay, if they ask for it, I can get it, but otherwise, it's put away, it's, not everywhere, and then you can revisit it and make
Mhm.
decisions. If they haven't asked about a craft or a piece of artwork for, like, 3 plus months, you can get rid of it. You have my permission.
I love that. It's actually really funny you bring that up. My mother is doing something similar where she's going through a bunch of stuff and she's like, "I have all your artwork from, when you were a kid." I'm like, "What? Do you want any of this?" And she's sending me pictures. I'm like, "No, I don't want that." "Mom, why'd you hold on to that?"
Meanwhile,
"I'm
we're
your
like
mother, I'm supposed
yeah.
to."
Meanwhile, we're surrounded by all of our own kids' stuff.
Right, right, and it really makes you think about it, like, you do it now, you're gonna do it later, and then
Mhm.
it's like I said, it's that space, and I think about, like, how many times has she moved, and how many times has she moved that box of my artwork from kindergarten
Yeah.
just for to ask me in my 30s if I want it, to then throw it away, when she could have probably kept 1 or 2 pieces
Mhm.
and tossed the rest, but I'm guilty of that too. I definitely have a art pile right now, and it is on the to review list, so I
Yeah.
can keep those couple of cute things and then toss the rest, but I love the idea of your hamper system having that spot for it to see if they notice that it's there or not, and then you can decide whether or not you keep it or get rid of it.
Yeah,
I think
and
that's
for
great.
me, summer, which is not too far away, but it's for me, it's camp and vacation Bible schools for like the entire summer for the kids.
Mm.
And there are so many crafts that come into my house. And so they go into the art purgatory, and then, 3 to 6 months later, like I actually sometimes will ask the kids if they put it in their little treasure boxes that they have in their rooms. I
Yeah.
just did this with my son with his little shoe box, and it was some things that were from Vacation Bible School from summer, 2022. And we went through, and he's like, "Oh, I don't want." I mean, he's 5, but he very quickly, with no prompting from me, was like, "I want this. I don't want this. I want this. I don't want this." Okay, buddy, box is full. Okay, I'm done. And you have the physical boundary for them too, so they're
Mhm.
able to make those decisions. So physical
Yeah.
boundaries are your best friend.
Yeah. And you're teaching it to your kids, and hopefully they'll be better for it, and
Yeah.
when they're an adult, do better than we did with it.
Mhm. Mhm.
It's teaching that next generation, right?
Yep.
Letting them see us do it and learn from us as we declutter and work on our mindset too, so that maybe they can be a step or 2 ahead
Yeah,
when
definitely.
it's time for them to be an adult and make those decisions themselves too. So, okay. I have loved this conversation, Emily. I am so excited, like I said, about spring cleaning, and these are some really great tips and tricks and mindset shifts to help keep that momentum going and to get ready for that new season of summer. Realistically, like you said, kids have summer camp, summer school programs, going to the beach, and just I feel like if we do this spring cleaning and this decluttering now, or we are able to get through some of these 15-minute pieces, right, we'll be able to enjoy those beach days and those moments a little bit more because our
Mhm.
head won't be caught over at home with that pile that we keep moving around.
I full disclosure, I have a pile right now, but it's the papers I need to
Yeah.
process. So yeah, I
Mhm.
have that and I'm like, okay, I'm tackling that this
Yeah.
weekend. Like no one's gonna stop me because I
Mhm.
cannot stand shuffling it around. It's like the
I hear
worst.
you. I do too. I have a paper bucket or a basket,
Mhm.
and every Sunday I empty the basket and I go through it and I toss or I keep, and then I have, like, my little pile of papers that go on my desk of, "Okay, these are the things I need to deal with this week." So, I hear you on that one,
Mhm.
and that always helps. So, again, Emily, thank you so much for coming on and talking to us about spring cleaning and decluttering our home and staying organized and ready for this new season. And how can people connect with you? So, again, great conversation, and people want to follow you. Where do they go?
Yeah, so the best is to go wherever you're listening to Jessa. Search for me at Moms Overcoming Overwhelm. And every week in the show notes, I have the link to my free Facebook group. And that's, like I said, every other week we do these decluttering challenges. And it's just been great. I've just been blown away with the progress that these moms are making in these
Mhm.
short increments of time. And that's really what we want to do. We want to show ourselves we can build that habit. And
Yeah,
so you are welcome to hang out with us there.
awesome. All right, and I will link to Emily's first podcast interview with me in there too, so you can get even more information about decluttering and mindset shifts as well. So, thank you again, Emily, for being on, and I love the conversation today.
Yeah, thanks again for having me. It was so fun.
Hey, Mama, thanks for hanging out with me today. I know you have a lot going on, and I appreciate you taking the time to listen. I hope this episode gives you new energy to tackle the day. If so, could you leave a review and subscribe to the podcast so that you never miss an episode? That would mean the world to me. I'd also love to connect with you on Instagram, so send me a DM and let me know if this episode was helpful. I love hearing from you. Remember, Mama, you got this. Until next time, I'm Jessa Ray, and this is Caught Up in Motherhood.